I was just holding a dress, that's it. I wanted to try it on, but the manager grabbed it from my hands and screamed at me in front of everyone like I was a thief. He had no idea who I was. He had no idea who was about to walk through that door looking for me, and by the time he found out, it was already too late for him. Before I tell you what happened that day, stay with me until the end because what happened next is something you will not believe. If stories like this move you, if you believe that respect should never depend on how much money someone has, then stick around, and don't forget to like this video and follow along, because this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is who I am underneath everything people assume when they look at me. I am a wife, I am a mother. I am a woman who grew up with very little, who folded clothes in a laundromat as a teenager just to help my mother pay rent, who never in a million years imagined that one day I would walk into designer stores without even glancing at the price tags. But life has a strange way of writing chapters you never expected. I met my husband when neither of us had anything. He was working late nights building something from nothing, sleeping 4 hours a night, running on coffee and stubbornness. I was working 2 jobs and going to school part-time, trying to build a future I could be proud of. We fell in love slowly, the way real things do. Not with fireworks, but with late-night conversations, shared meals we could barely afford, and dreams we whispered to each other like secrets. Neither of us knew back then that his ideas, the ones people laughed at, the ones investors turned down again and again, would one day turn into a company worth more money than either of us could have imagined as kids. But here is the thing about becoming wealthy after you've known what it's like to have nothing. You don't forget. You don't change who you are on the inside, even if the outside of your life looks completely different. I still shop the way I always have. I still smile at people who serve me. I still say thank you to the person handing me my coffee. Money changed our bank account. It never changed my heart. That morning started like any other. My husband had promised me a day out, just the two of us, no meetings, no emails, no emergencies. We hadn't had a real day together in weeks because his schedule had been brutal, back-to-back calls with investors, a new expansion opening overseas, endless demands pulling him in every direction. So when he told me to clear my calendar because we were spending the day together, I felt like a teenager again, giddy over something as simple as walking through a shopping mall holding his hand. We arrived at one of those high-end shopping centers, the kind with marble floors so polished you can see your reflection, the kind where soft music plays from hidden speakers and everything smells like expensive perfume. The kind of place where staff members are trained to notice everything, and unfortunately sometimes that means noticing the wrong things about the wrong people. The staff recognized my husband immediately. Of course they did. His face had been in business magazines, his name attached to deals that made headlines. People straightened up when he walked by, doors seemed to open a little faster. Chairs appeared out of nowhere for him to sit in while he waited, but nobody looked twice at me. I was just the woman standing next to him, and that was fine. Honestly, I preferred it that way. I never wanted the attention that came with his success. I just wanted normal moments, moments where I could browse a store and pick out a dress the same way I used to when I was saving up every dollar from my paycheck. We had barely been inside for 20 minutes when his phone rang. I watched his face shift, that familiar tightness that meant business had found him again, even on a day he swore would be just for us. He mouthed an apology to me, phone pressed to his ear already, and stepped toward a quieter corner near the entrance to take the call. I told him to go ahead, that I would keep browsing, that I would be fine on my own for a few minutes. I meant it too, I wasn't upset. This was our life, and I had learned a long time ago that his work never really stopped, not completely. So there I was, alone in this beautiful store, surrounded by racks of clothing that probably cost more individually than my mother used to make in a month. And that is when I saw it. A dress hanging near the back of the store, deep green with delicate detailing along the sleeves, the kind of dress that makes you stop walking the second you notice it. I don't know what it was about that dress, but something about it called to me. Maybe it reminded me of a dress I used to admire in a magazine years ago, back when buying something like that wasn't even a fantasy I allowed myself to have. Maybe it was just beautiful. Either way, I walked over to it, my fingers brushing against the fabric, feeling how soft and expensive it was. I lifted it off the rack carefully, the way you handle something you respect, and I turned to look for a mirror, thinking about holding it up against myself to see how the color would look with my skin tone. I was smiling. I remember that clearly because that smile did not last long. A man came rushing toward me from across the store, moving so fast that other shoppers turned to look. He was dressed sharply, clearly someone in a position of authority, a manager badge clipped to his jacket. Before I could even process what was happening, he reached out and snatched the dress right out of my hands. "How dare you touch this?" he said, his voice loud enough that it echoed off the marble floors. "Put this down immediately." I stood there for a second, stunned, my hands still hovering in the air where the dress used to be. I thought maybe I had misheard him, or maybe there was some kind of misunderstanding. So I tried to explain, keeping my voice calm even though my heart was pounding. "I was just looking at it," I said. "I wanted to see if it would fit me." But he wasn't listening. His eyes moved over me, quick and dismissive, taking in my casual outfit, my simple sneakers, the plain bag on my shoulder. I could see exactly what was happening in his mind. He was measuring me, deciding what kind of person I was based on nothing but appearance, and in his mind I did not belong anywhere near that dress. "This is a $4,000 dress," he said, holding it against his chest like I might snatch it back and run. "It is not for trying on by just anyone who walks in here. Do you even understand what this is worth?" By now, people had stopped their own shopping to watch. I felt every single pair of eyes in that store land on me. My face burned with embarrassment, that particular kind of humiliation that sinks deep into your stomach and makes you want to disappear. I have felt that feeling before in my life, more times than I would like to admit, moments where someone decided who I was before I ever opened my mouth. I thought those days were behind me. I thought a different life meant different treatment. But standing there, I realized some things never really change, no matter how much your circumstances do. I tried one more time to explain myself, keeping my voice steady even though inside I was shaking. "Sir, I understand it's expensive. I still would like to try it on if that's allowed." He let out a short, sharp laugh, the kind that has no humor in it at all, only cruelty. "Allowed, ma'am, I think you should leave before I have to call security. We don't need any trouble here." Trouble, that word hit me harder than anything else he had said. He was talking to me like I was a threat, like I had walked in there with bad intentions, when all I had done was admire a piece of clothing the same way any other customer in that store had the right to do. Other shoppers nearby, women who did not look like me, had been trying on dresses and jewelry all morning without a single person questioning them. But somehow, when it was my hands touching the fabric, it became a problem worth shouting about. I felt tears building behind my eyes, hot and embarrassing, and I fought hard to keep them from falling. I did not want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break down in the middle of a crowded store. So I stood there, jaw clenched, trying to hold onto whatever dignity I had left while people whispered around me, while a young employee near the register looked down at the floor, too afraid or too indifferent to say anything in my defense. I don't know how long that moment lasted. It felt like an eternity, though it was probably only a minute or two. But sometimes seconds can feel like they stretch out forever when you're standing in the middle of being humiliated in front of strangers. And then I heard footsteps, fast and determined, moving through the store from the direction of the entrance. I recognized that walk before I even turned around. My husband had finished his call sooner than I expected, and something in the air, some instinct, must have told him things had shifted while he was gone. He appeared beside me within seconds, his eyes immediately taking in the scene, my flushed face, the manager still gripping the dress like a weapon, the crowd of onlookers frozen in place. I watched something change in his expression the moment he understood what was happening. I had seen him calm during business crises, steady during negotiations that would have broken most men. But this was different, this was personal. "What is going on here?" he said, his voice low but carrying a weight that made the entire store go quiet. The manager, still not realizing who he was speaking to, straightened his jacket and gestured toward me like I was some kind of problem he had successfully handled. "Sir, this woman was handling merchandise she has no business touching. I was simply protecting store property." My husband stepped closer, and I could feel the tension radiating off him, controlled but unmistakable. "This woman," he said slowly, "is my wife, and you screamed at her in front of an entire store because she picked up a dress." The color drained from the manager's face almost instantly. I watched it happen in real time, the shift from arrogant authority to something close to panic. He glanced between the two of us, and I could see the exact moment realization hit him. The moment he understood that the woman he had just humiliated was not some random shopper he could dismiss and disrespect, but the wife of a man whose name was likely stitched somewhere into the ownership papers of that very mall, or at the very least. Someone whose business and reputation carried enough weight to end careers with a single phone call. "I did not know," the manager stammered, his voice shaking now, all that earlier confidence completely gone. "I am so sorry, sir, I had no idea, please let me explain." But my husband was not interested in explanations. "You didn't need to know who she was to treat her with basic respect," he said, his voice rising just enough that everyone in the store could hear him clearly. "You judged her the second you looked at her. You decided she didn't belong here before she ever said a word to you. That is exactly the problem. Respect should never depend on who someone is married to or how much money is in their account." It should be given because she is a human being standing in your store. I felt something loosen in my chest as he spoke, a tightness I hadn't even realized I was holding onto since the moment the manager grabbed that dress from my hands. It wasn't about being defended because I was somebody's wife. It was about someone finally saying out loud what I had felt every single time in my life when people looked at me and decided I was less than, decided I didn't belong somewhere, decided my worth based on nothing but assumptions. The manager's hands were visibly trembling now. He turned to me, and for the first time since this entire encounter began, he actually looked at me, really looked at me, the way you look at a person instead of a threat. Ma'am, I am deeply sorry. I should never have spoken to you that way. There is no excuse for it, please forgive me. He went as far as pressing his palms together, his head bowing slightly, the posture of a man who understood he had made a mistake that could genuinely cost him everything. Other employees nearby had gone completely silent, watching their manager unravel in real time, probably realizing that the reputation of the entire store, maybe even their jobs, hung in the balance of the next few moments. I could have stayed angry. I had every right to. The humiliation from moments earlier was still fresh, still stinging somewhere deep in my chest. But as I looked at this man, visibly shaking, genuinely remorseful now that the truth had smacked him in the face, I thought about something my grandmother used to tell me when I was young. She used to say that the true measure of a person is not how they treat you when they think you're powerful, but how they treat you when they think you're nobody. This manager had failed that test completely. But watching him crumble in front of me wasn't going to undo the sting of being judged and dismissed. It wasn't going to erase the way strangers had watched me be humiliated without a single person stepping in to defend me. What mattered now was what happened next, not just for me, but for every other person who might walk through those doors someday and be treated the way I had just been treated. I turned to my husband first, placing my hand gently on his arm, feeling the tension still coiled in his body. "I'm okay," I told him quietly. "I'm all right." Then I turned back to the manager. "You didn't know who I was," I said, my voice steady now, stronger than it had been just minutes earlier. "But that shouldn't matter. Somebody's worth isn't decided by what they can afford or who they're married to. It's decided by how they treat people when nobody important is watching. Today, you failed that test in front of everyone in this store. I hope you remember this moment, not because of who my husband is, but because of who I am, and who every other person walking through that door deserves to be treated as, a human being worthy of basic decency." The manager nodded, his eyes glassy, clearly shaken to his core. My husband spoke with him further calm now but firm, discussing what accountability would look like, what changes needed to happen not just for that manager, but for how staff across the entire store were trained to treat every single customer who walked through those doors regardless of how they looked or what they were wearing. Word of what happened spread through that store and eventually through that entire shopping complex, faster than either of us expected. Not because we wanted attention, we never do, but because stories like this have a way of traveling on their own. Employees who had watched silently that day later said it changed the way they thought about how they treated customers. Some of them admitted they too had made assumptions about people based on appearance more times than they were proud to admit. As for the manager, he kept his job, but not without real consequences. He went through training focused on treating every customer with equal respect, no exceptions, no assumptions. And from what I heard later, he became one of the most respectful employees in that entire store, greeting every person who walked in with the same warmth, whether they were wearing designer labels or a simple t-shirt and jeans. Sometimes the hardest lessons end up teaching people the most. As for me, I walked out of that store that day without the green dress. Honestly, after everything that happened, I didn't even want it anymore. It wasn't about the dress at all. It never really was. It was about being seen as a person worthy of respect regardless of appearances, regardless of assumptions, regardless of what someone decides about you before you even speak a single word. I think about that day often, not with anger anymore, but with a deep sense of purpose. Because it reminded me of something I never want to forget, something I hope you never forget either. You never really know who is standing in front of you. The woman in simple clothes browsing quietly might be someone with more strength, more history, and more power than you could ever imagine. Kindness and respect should never be reserved only for people we assume are important. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity every single time, no matter what. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of a moment in your own life when someone judged you before they truly knew you, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment and tell me your story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today, because somewhere out there, someone is being judged unfairly right now, and maybe this story will remind them of their own worth. And if you want more real stories like this one, stories about dignity, respect, And the quiet strength it takes to hold your head high even when the world tries to make you feel small. Make sure you subscribe and stay close, because there is another powerful story coming very soon, and you will not want to miss it.